Hello, and welcome to Know a Way Around. Wardrobe alterations are near and dear to my heart. There is something amazing about the thought that you can get a subpar piece of clothing and turn it into something incredible and perfect for you with a few easy steps. We will see if that's what happens today. I grabbed another dress to use as a template just to give me a guideline of how long I needed this skirt to be, minus the ruffle, obviously. I don't remember exactly how much seam allowance I included, but just as a note, if you are going to be doing any kind of length adjustment or really any adjustment, just remember that your seam allowance will cut into your fabric. So before you cut, make sure you leave a little bit of extra that you can use to stitch. I think 1/4 inch is standard, but do what feels right to you. Here I'm just measuring out the length of the ruffle I want. I wanted this to actually be a straight hem, unlike some of my stitching and cutting, so I measured at multiple places and used pins to mark my measurements. One of my biggest pro tips when sewing is to make sure you iron everything. Now, this doesn't always apply. If you're working with Lycra or something, you want to be very cautious how you use heat on it because you can melt synthetics. But if you're working with a natural fiber, especially a woven, just go crazy on the iron. There's very little you can do to it, with a few exceptions. I mean, do your research, but there's very little you can do to a natural fiber woven. And it just makes every step of the process go by so much smoother, so much better. It does take a little extra time, but it is 100% worth it. I decided to do the gathers for my ruffle by hand. You definitely can do it on a sewing machine, but to be honest, ruffling on a sewing machine is always intimidating to me. And if you do it by hand and you're not entirely sure exactly how precisely your ruffling will fit into your final project, it's a little bit more adjustable in my experience. You basically just run a basting stitch through that bad boy, cinch it up, and when you are done, you will be able to kind of move the fabric along on the thread. Just make sure that when you finish with it, you cut your thread a little bit extra long so that you have some give and you have a little bit of flexibility in the length that you want your final ruffle to be. When I initially went back and rewatched this footage, I realized I had no idea what I was doing here. I mean, not the setting up of the machine. You're about to see me sew something, and I had no idea what I was about to sew. I realized after the 3rd time watching it, wondering what the heck I was doing, that I was sewing in darts. So you know how I had mentioned that I wanted to take the skirt in a little bit so it would be more fitted and then it would be ruffled? Yeah, that's what I'm doing here, but I forgot to film me measuring the darts, or I forgot to put them in the final cut or something. But what I'm sewing in is some darts that I measured earlier. I literally just put the skirt on inside out, pin fitted it onto myself, and then took in the amount of fabric that I pin fitted. I left it with a little bit of give still so I could walk, but that's a pretty good method of doing darts if you only have to do 2 or if it's an alteration on an existing garment. So here I'm going to be going and pinning my ruffle to the rest of my skirt so that I can sew it on. Pins are your best friend, you guys. And I found that the easiest way to fit a ruffle to a certain amount of fabric is to match the edges. So here I have my skirt unbuttoned so it kind of lays flat, and I'm just pinning each edge of the ruffle to each edge of the skirt, and then I can arrange the ruffle along the gathering string in the middle. When I did historical costuming, I would frequently wear super full petticoats on a drawstring, and you would kind of just like tie the drawstring where you needed it and then rearrange the ruffles around it accordingly. It's kind of the easiest way to make sure your ruffle isn't too lopsided. Here I am putting on some finishing touches. To keep the edges of my seam from fraying on the inside, because this woven linen frays really easily, and to make the top edge of the closure look neater, I am top stitching the edges of the seam down, and then whip stitching them a few inches into the seam. Honestly, I probably should have whip stitched the edges along the entire seam, but I was wanting to get the project done. Here's a better look at what I did. As a side note, I did not realize my concentration face was so terrifying. To anyone I've accidentally intimidated with this, I hope you made a full recovery. Okay, so final verdict. I actually think that this didn't turn out exactly the way I wanted it to. Basically, you could probably tell in like the after shot, but this is the seam between the ruffle and the old skirt, and I just couldn't really take enough fabric out of the main skirt when I cropped it without being able to like, I need to be able to walk. So I couldn't like take the darts in too much, and basically that meant there wasn't as much of a surplus of fabric for the ruffle that I thought there was. So it's kind of a like semi-ruffle, like it's not really very ruffly, which is sad. It's kind of a disappointment. But overall, I think it turned out well. You can see at the end there, I was just whip stitching the edges to make them look a little bit nicer on the inside. And I'm probably going to do something else to finish up the inside too, because this linen is a woven and it frays really easily, which is an upside and a downside. So you can kind of see, like, this is the interior seam. So, but this was just a really quick, fast, lazy upcycle because I've been meaning to do something to this skirt for a while. So we'll see what happens. If you want to know about like actually really good professional seamstress techniques, you may occasionally stumble across one of those on this channel, but your girl's getting into sewing again after a really long time of not doing a lot with it. So I'm kind of relearning as I go, and this skirt was a good start. I'm trying to be chill and relaxed because, you know, for me, I'm the type of person where if I set my sights too high, if I'm too much of a perfectionist, I won't get a lot done because I'll just go in circles redoing the same stuff over and over again. So this was the first of hopefully many projects on this channel, and I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good afternoon. Stay safe out there.